Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and we have a really, really busy weekend coming up in the New London area. I can't believe how many events are going on, but tonight's guests are going to talk about a series of events that maybe have more significance than many of them that sound great, but it's just they're happening because the weather's finally nice and people want to do things. But my guests tonight are Jean Jordan, who is the president of the New London branch of the NAACP, and Aileen Novick, who's the project manager for the Hempsted houses. And both of them have been on the show before at this time of year to talk about the various Juneteenth related activities in New London. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I guess maybe we can start out talking about why is Juneteenth significant?
Juneteenth is a day celebrated. It's normally June 19th. It happened June 19th, 1865, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, when the last of the slaves in Texas found out they were finally free. Again, 2 years after the fact. Different theories on why, but.
And I imagine if you're free, but nobody knows you're free, the freedom isn't doing you much good.
I think someone knew they were free. They just didn't know they were free.
Could be.
So it's also a holiday that 48 states recognize it as a holiday.
Really?
Yeah. Connecticut is one of the states that does recognize it as a holiday. I think it's like North Dakota, South Dakota, Hawaii, maybe it's 45 states, Hawaii, and 2 others that don't recognize it as a holiday.
Yeah, and there's a national committee that's trying to make it even more of a nationally recognized holiday.
I think I had read recently that there was a push to get it on the calendar as a real holiday. It seems as though some of the holidays we celebrate and get days off to really give thought to are less significant, events in our history.
Right. I know in the African American community, from talking to my aunt, she remembers when they celebrated Emancipation Day. She said that was a big holiday in a lot of communities, Emancipation Day. Whereas we didn't celebrate Juneteenth then, it was Emancipation Day.
So what date was Emancipation Day?
She remembers it being like in the fall, in some, like Providence. She remembers them having Emancipation Day celebration.
That's really interesting. But Juneteenth was really, and that was kind of the start of the process, I guess, Emancipation Day. And Juneteenth is more like
the final, the end.
When it actually happened everywhere.
Right, right.
And there was a gap of not only months, but years between point A and point B.
Exactly.
So I remember when I first moved to the area, there were small Juneteenth celebrations at Riverside Park, I think.
Right. The Kente Cultural Center was in charge of Juneteenth for many years until the Cultural Center shut down. Norwich has always had their Juneteenth closer to the June 19th date. So in New London, we always did it the weekend before, so as not to butt heads and people can have 2 weekends of celebration. But yes, we, Juneteenth previously, Riverside Park, we had it. Downtown New London a few times. Black Hall Street. So it's been around the city.
And it's been at, Hempsted houses and OIC, that neighborhood for how many years now?
This is the 5th year.
Year.
5th year.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of exciting to me because that whole Hempsted neighborhood was really important in New London in terms of the African American community here.
And that's one of the reasons why we keep it in that neighborhood. We've been asked to move it down to the waterfront, but it doesn't benefit us, nor does it benefit the community. We want it to be a community activity, and the community that benefits both is the Hempsted district, because that's a historic neighborhood for African Americans.
And if you look at the houses there, many of them were, the residents there were, many of them
Were freed tradesmen. Right. And Aileen knows a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we just did a walk, because we do a walk usually for Trails Day.
Oh, right.
Of the Hempsted Historic District, and this year we went kind of a different route, still in the district, but looking at the monuments in the district, who we remember. We have like Garvin Street, which is right
Right.
Oh, we're going to switch
near
switch
us.
your mic? Is that what we're doing? Okay, Aileen, we need to get you a new mic.
Oh.
Maybe this one is not working well. No.
I can take it off. There we go.
Sorry about that distraction.
It's all right.
It's live TV.
Okay.
So we did
Yeah.
the walk, and we looked at like Garvin Street as sort of a monument now, but if you have to know what it means that it was switched from High Street in 1972. So trying to think of what could we do more in the city so that people actually remember the history better.
Right.
Now, I guess I have some slides here, and it might be a good idea to talk about what exactly is happening, because it isn't just a one-day event, it's a whole weekend.
Yes.
We've worked our way up from 1 day to 2 days to 3 days now. So we're really excited. And Friday night starts with Joseph McGill of the Slave Dwelling Project, and he will be spending the night at Aileen's,
Yeah,
otherwise known as the Hempsted House.
That's right. He'll be sleeping again. We did this last year, and we're very excited that he's returning 2 years in a row. That's really exciting because he runs a national program, the Slave Dwelling Project, and he's always looking for northern sites to spend the night at. And so he'll be back this year. So we start at 7 p.m. with a community campfire where people can come hear more about his project of trying to sleep at all these still existing slave dwellings across the country to really bring attention to the history. So he has a community campfire, lets people talk about his work, what they think about it, and then a smaller group of people stay in the house with him to experience that.
So how long has he been doing this?
A number of
Yeah,
years.
it's
He's
been a while.
up to, I think he's been to 19 states and over 90 sites.
Now, I have a picture here, but I do not know
That's Joseph McGill.
if,
Oh,
okay,
no,
I
that's-
thought him.
No,
it's
that's
not.
Kevin
That's
Johnson.
Kevin Johnson.
That's Kevin Johnson.
Okay.
Who's from the Connecticut State Library Archives, and he'll be speaking at Juneteenth. And he portrays two people, Jordan Freeman and then Private William Webb, who was a Connecticut soldier in the Civil War.
And as you know, Jordan Freeman was a local African American from Groton.
Oh, wow. So this whole region really had a part in it.
Very much.
Now, you gave me several photos, I'm guessing from last year, so maybe we'll talk a little bit about last year and then what people can look forward to in detail this year.
That's Joe McGill, and that's him
Okay.
at the community campfire last year on the Friday evening.
And you said that starts around 7?
7
Yep,
p.m.
7 p.m. at the Hempsted House, and we have a fire. It's supposed to be good weather,
Yes.
right? And so
Yeah,
people
the
just-
weekend's supposed to be beautiful.
Yeah, people sit outside, and we have a discussion with him. That's Malaya behind him, who's in one of our youth group students who came out. So it was a nice mix of people of different ages and
And the
backgrounds.
conversation was so good that your walking tour that you just had came about because of the conversations at the campfire.
And there's no limitation for like how many people can attend. I'm guessing just show up, the more the
Just show-
merrier.
Yes.
Mr. McGill loves it, and he is an amazing facilitator of discussion. People really, wherever he goes across the country, he attracts a crowd. That's Tammy Denise, and she'll be performing this year on Sunday as Joan Jackson, who was a woman enslaved and freed and back into slavery and finally freed again in colonial New London. And she tells that story.
Now, I guess historically, listening to this, I have a question about slavery in the North. We always hear about slavery in the South, but we know there were slaves in New England. And was it common for people to go back and forth to be from being slaves to free to maybe being enslaved again or indentured again?
I don't think it was common, but there are stories where that has happened. But as far as it being common, I don't believe so.
No, because, it's kind of unusual to be freed. She
Right.
was freed. Hers was kind of a special story. And then what you find are people in the North who were free getting put down south to be enslaved. A lot of times kidnapped or said, oh, this is a fugitive slave that I found, when in fact they'd been free.
And we know that from the story To Be a Slave.
Yeah. Well, and I think that movie, 12 Years a Slave.
And 12 Years a Slave,
yeah, talked
yes.
about that as well, that you could be free, but that doesn't mean you...
If you're in the wrong area.
Yeah, you could be caught, and if you don't have all your paperwork.
Right, and David Ruggles, who was a black abolitionist from Norwich, that was his mission. He was in New York City, and that was a popular place to just kind of steal people and send them down south. And he really made it so that he was funding that people would get lawyers so that they could say, I am a free person.
Because otherwise, you'd move. You don't have people who know you there.
Exactly.
Right,
a
and
lot.
nobody would listen, really.
Well, they weren't very motivated to listen,
No,
were
because
they?
they were making money. Yeah.
And we have Dwight, the professor, and his band Shades of Joy, who is performing again. He's been with us for the whole 5 years.
He has.
I think he was performing in some of the ones years and years
He
ago.
was.
I kind of remember him doing drumming,
Yes.
I don't know, 15,
He was with
20,
the original
25
Juneteenth.
years ago.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And he always starts us off with drumming, and then the band plays throughout the day, and they're a great band. We're lucky to have them.
That is the Lion's Den dance group run by Miss Lillian Cook. Lillian is the dance teacher at Benny Dover Jackson Middle School now, and her dance company has also been with us from the beginning. This year they will be performing on Sunday.
So it seems like your events are like stretching out a little bit compared to some past years.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we started last year with the Sunday programming because we'd always had the church service of In His Presence Ministries, and so then we decided to have music and really continue.
Yeah, we
with
made
that.
the afternoon go longer. And we also still will have food out on Sunday, so it makes a big deal. It's very nice and relaxed. We have church, then we just sit around and we listen to the music and the dances for the afternoon, run across the street, get some food if we want, come back and sit. Very relaxed.
Now, the food is something that OIC is taking care of?
OIC will have their culinary program there, and I can tell you, I have tasted some of their offerings, and they are doing a fabulous job. In fact, they will be catering our next prayer breakfast.
Wow.
Yeah, the food is fabulous.
It's a little off topic, but that food service program has been going on for a long time at
It
OIC.
has stopped for a while. They have a brand new kitchen.
Right, they just opened
Yeah,
it.
and they had the grand opening of the kitchen 2 weeks ago. So they have a brand new kitchen, so the culinary program is back up and running.
So they're doing Milton proud.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and they'll really be showcased this time
Yes.
because this time there'll be at least 5 students from the culinary program.
I think they're going to do small bites.
Yes, that's right. So we're really excited about that.
And I've had some of their small bites, and they're really good.
And we will have other vendors as
Right.
well. We've had the Smokehouse guys who have been there a number of years
Right.
now.
Vincent Augman with his Caribbean jerk. Nikisha's husband also does some Caribbean food. So we've had different people. The Lions Club, I think, will be there doing hot dogs. Because, you have kids around. They want hot dogs.
Yeah.
We want the jerk chicken. They want the hot dogs.
Yeah, I guess we can't get away from that. And
That's Mr. McGill up in the garret of the Hempsted houses. And we asked him, we just had a phone call with him yesterday, to bring back his quilt. Because he's made this great quilt and it has blocks on it from every place. Well, not every place, but a lot of
the
places that he's been. And he's going to work with school students again Friday morning. This time we have Jennings Elementary from
Oh,
just
great.
up the road visiting. And it's really neat for them to see all the different places. A lot of them are presidential homes that he's been to, and for them to hear the history that often isn't told about those presidential homes, about how many enslaved people were at those sites.
And in like the first 50 years of the presidency, for sure, I think all the presidents were slave owners.
Yes, very definitely. I think if you owned land, you were a slave owner. It didn't make a difference. It was just how things were done.
Okay. This is a group shot, but
That's
what
from
was
the group last year. Yep, last year we had Regional Multicultural Magnet School visit us, and so that's them with their teacher and Tammy Denise portraying Joan Jackson and Joe McGill there at the bottom.
And I'm not is this?
That is Mount Moriah Church.
And they're coming
They're
back.
coming
this year.
back, and they were fabulous. Their minister, because we know Reverend Cornish was the minister for many years,
Right.
that's their minister they're singing. He's a young minister, and they were just fabulous. And we can't wait to have them back.
Yeah, they'll be starting us off Sunday. We'll have drumming, and then at 1:15 they go right on, so it should be great.
So basically, there is music going on all day of all sorts.
Oh, definitely.
So on June 7th, the campfire starts at 7 and probably, I'm guessing, goes on kind of late.
Yeah, usually till like 8:30, 8:45.
Yeah, almost 9 o'clock, I think we were last year. It was dark when we finally left.
But
Yeah.
you can leave earlier if
Yeah.
you want to.
You
No,
won't want
but
to, but you can.
Yeah, but if there's a fire, it's nice to kind of stay
is
till it
nice.
gets a little bit
I
dark.
joke that my sweatshirt, I had that camp spell on it even after I washed it for months afterwards.
So on June 8th, on Saturday, what time do the activities start?
At noon. Yep, we start off at noon. And so that will be with the drumming and Shades of Joy. And we have a lot of different performers this year. And so we have at 12:30, we'll have Tiger Eye Dance Team. And they're new performers for us. We have LaShalle Gillis has working with us on our committee, and she does a lot with the New London Talent Show and a lot of photography and videography with a lot of local talent. So she's helped us get some, because we want to change things up too. So we have some different performances this year.
But we have back this year the Nathan Hale Arts Choir. So we're looking forward to having, our school children so that people can see exactly what they are doing in the magnet school.
And this is actually the perfect time of year. It's near the end of their school year. They've been working together on
Yes.
it all year, and now they get to show everyone what they've been doing.
That's right.
And we also have a new group, and it's called Bully. And Lachelle found this for us, and they do music, and I'm not sure if it's dance, on the topic of bullying. So that is going to be
Yeah, she's
interesting.
a dancer. It's a young girl, and she even got to perform at the Apollo Theater last year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so she's
So we're
quite-
excited to see her. And then we also have a panel discussion with Joseph McGill, the Witness Stones, and myself, because Tamara won't be able to make it.
No, she's going to
Oh,
be there.
she is?
Yep.
Ay.
Tamara Lanier, who is our first vice president, has a lawsuit against Harvard University based on her relative Rente, and we will be discussing a little bit about that.
I was going to ask you about that here too, that, what the status is. It's gotten a fair bit of press.
I
but
think one of the last
I-
things I saw was that the Harvard Crimson came out and said that Harvard needs to do better and make this right. Whereas a few years ago, when Tammy first talked to them, the Harvard Crimson did not write anything. We think they were told not to. But
They
this time
were told not to
they
'cause
came
they
out
called
and they
them.
have said Harvard needs to make this right.
And, this is a bigger issue that's, really important that she's bringing this up, because many universities around the country have, antiquities and objects of value that really
And
were
many-
taken from the communities that created
And they have
them.
returned many of those antiquities. This basically is a lawsuit about reparations. I know people don't like to hear that word, but it is very much about reparations. What do those descendants of slaves deserve? And for years, slave descendants don't get anything because you can't prove who your slave ancestors are because there's no really written record. However, in Tamara's case, a story was told throughout generations, and the name Rente was given throughout generations, that they were able to keep this story going, and they knew exactly where their slave ancestors were from, what plantation they were on. So I think that makes it a little bit different.
Certainly as a test case, it's a better case than many. And I hope that people get more comfortable with the idea of reparations, because some of the inequities that happened, some 150 or 200 years
Right.
ago, but some happening not that long ago in the 50s and 60s with redlining of neighborhoods, really changed the ability of people to keep up and get their share. So I personally am all for reparations.
And what we know is that other groups over time, over history, have been given back things of monetary value. They've been given back stolen artwork. However, slave descendants have not.
Well, that's what's interesting, because a lot of art museums have someone on the job who just looks through the European collection to make sure there's nothing that was stolen, especially during World War II. A lot of Jewish art was looted
Right.
from
Yeah.
people. And so this case could kind of, it's interesting to look at what's had to be done at these museums when you think of all the things that have been taken from people in different circumstances, and see, could it be similar, that they have to have some say over what happens to their own objects and artwork.
And just the whole reason for the photographs to be taken is truly horrific. I mean, the photographs were taken to prove a theory that African Americans, were a different species, that we were not human. And they weren't given a choice. These are nude photographs.
Yeah, in fact, I have one photo here of Tamara with a
I love this picture because that's Tamara with the photograph and a picture of her mother, because it's because of her mother that this is happening today, because she
Right.
kept the story going.
And Agassiz was that scientist that Jean is talking about, and he was funded by Harvard University.
Right.
So they do.
So he
need
could
to-
stay in this country. He needed
Wow.
us to study something in order to stay in this country. He has a horn named after him in Switzerland, Agassiz horn
in the Alps.
in the Alps.
Wow. So someone actually did become very wealthy off of this research.
Well, I would say so.
Well, and the university makes money
Money.
off the daguerreotypes, and they won't let anyone else, like they wouldn't let Tammy even use an image from them.
Right, and it's her ancestor, her grandfather. And when she first started this lawsuit, we were in Baltimore a few years ago, and her attorney is Benjamin Crump. And I remember one of the first things I said was, the first thing they're going to say is, you can't prove this because you have no paperwork. You have no records to prove this. Of course there's no paperwork. Of course there's no records, because he was a slave.
And for slaves, actually learning to be literate was dangerous.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's really sort of a catch-22. And not to mention that in Africa, I think many communities had a tradition of oral history anyway. But I think one of the reasons, you mentioned the Holocaust and World War II, I think one of the reasons that I think reparations make a lot of sense, I don't have any direct ancestors from the Holocaust, but that's sort of where my grandparents came
Right.
from. They happened to come in the early 1900s, but I'm sure I had like second and third cousins, relatives who didn't come to the United States in the early 1900s. And, to lose, so everything you have, and then future generations losing everything and letting that, unfairness trickle down is really not right. And in terms of the legacy of slavery,
Exactly.
that's over centuries, not just over, one horrific crisis that lasted, a decade.
We listen to people talk about what their ancestry is. For those of us who are African American, we have to do a DNA test now to find out exactly what part of Africa we come from, because we don't have that background knowledge. It's been lost to us. So to have Tammy's story out there is, it's major. And the case, as it's written right now, the lawsuit should be a primary source in history classes across the country.
Now, is she getting a lot of response from people all around the country who
There's
are
been-
very intrigued by this?
We have seen news pieces from all across the country. I think one day something came up from India. A newspaper in India did an article about it. So it's going around the world. It's going around the world.
And
so.
she's been really generous with her time because we do an activism program with the NAACP, and she spoke to both 8th grader groups from Benny Dover Jackson Middle and West Side Middle and Groton about the case, and the kids were really very interested in it.
Well, I have to say, a year or so ago, I think it was, I was at an event that there were many of the youth, from NAACP, and they were a really impressive bunch of kids.
We train them well. Sometimes they don't like the training because if we take them to national convention, they start at 7 a.m. in the morning and the adults start at 8. And then they have to sit through the adults meeting. So they're very well trained because they get training nationally.
Now, I see another photo, I guess, from...
That's from when we slept over with Mr. McGill. In the morning, he had some of the people came out, and This Place Matters, that goes with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, who's always trying to save buildings, and that is really Mr. McGill's background. He's a preservationist, is how he got his start, and so that's really how he started sleeping. He was trying to raise funds for Magnolia Plantation in South Carolina to preserve the slave dwellings, because a lot of times they save the big house, but they don't preserve or restore the slave dwellings, and so that's why he started this mission, was a way to raise money, and so now it's a way to bring attention to that.
And here's, I think this might be one last photo.
Yep, that's Mr. McGill in his Civil War attire, which he doesn't wear because we're a little early for that, so he does wear a different outfit with
Right.
Now, I wanted to mention also that it's Connecticut Open House Day.
Yes.
So not just the Hempsted houses, but there are sites all over the state that people can go to over this weekend, correct?
Yep, for a lot of times for free, yes.
Yeotown Mill will be open also.
Yep, and you can look online and see through Connecticut Open House Day all the different sites.
Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about other things going on. You have a Freedom Fund dinner coming up later this month.
Yes, we do, June 27th. And we are lucky to have famed civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump coming. He is also Tamara's lawyer, so we had a little bit of connection. And we also have Josh Koskoff, who is from Bridgeport, and his family is very famous in Connecticut as civil rights attorneys. Josh is also the lead attorney for the Sandy Hook families. And his father, Michael Koskoff, just passed away. Michael wrote the movie Marshall, about Thurgood Marshall, with his other son.
Now, you showed that movie, a year or two
We showed
ago?
We showed it
Last
last summer at Juneteenth.
Yeah,
We're
that
not
was
doing a movie this year, but
And he even came and
He-
spoke.
Oh,
and,
yeah, I went to that. That was
Yes.
fantastic.
and Tammy Lanier was hoping to be here to speak about her role, because she's going to be on that panel for Juneteenth, but he just recently passed,
and Saturday is his memorial
no, it's
service.
today.
Today.
So that's why she couldn't be here
Right.
tonight.
Today.
She's there on Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're very honored to have both of these gentlemen here because the work that they do is so important, and people just don't realize how important what they do is. The panel discussion this year, we're doing dinner a little bit differently. We're going to have a little panel discussion instead of having a keynote speaker, and on African American history. Should African American history be taught, and the reasons why? And as we know, the bill was just passed here in the state for African American and Latino history. A year ago, a bill was passed to teach the Holocaust, and I was like, well, why didn't they do this all together? Because it's just as important. And this year, we passed it so that African American and Latino history must be taught in the school system. New London has a little jump start because they had ethnic cultures class this year.
And I would think that New London would be very supportive of having this initiative anyway.
Oh, very definitely. They like I said, the class was supposed to start last fall. The curriculum wasn't ready, so it started in January, and they were able to find funds so that the students could go to Washington, D.C. So the students of the ethnic cultures class went to Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago. They were able to go to the African American Museum and visit different sites around Washington, D.C.
I know that I've been trying to follow legislation that's going on at the state, and this seemed like one of the more exciting things that's happened this session.
Well, it's even more exciting because this is 2019. In 1619, that's when the first African slaves came to this country. So it is 400 years of African American history in this country.
And to put it in context of Connecticut, we are a state that has a very big wealth gap, that's a very segregated state, and I sometimes feel as though, it's great, and I'm not surprised that New London kind of got a jump on it, but, some of the people who live in Litchfield County or in some of the, more gated towns in Connecticut, this will really be new to them.
And I had someone say to me, well, I don't understand why you have to teach Black history. You should just teach history. And I said, that's the problem. Because in teaching history, we are leaving out big parts of our history. We have big gaps in that history. So therefore, this is the way to make sure that those gaps start getting filled in until a time when it just becomes the norm that as we teach history, we are teaching about African Americans, we are teaching about Native Americans, we are teaching about Latino Americans, that it's all together and not having to be done separately.
Well, I think for a long time, whoever owned the printing press got to write the history,
Well,
right?
I think the history goes back to the two biggest states are Texas and California. Publishing companies, from what I've been told over the years, look to those two states, and those two states also tend to buy textbooks for their districts. Therefore, what we all teach is dependent upon what California and Texas wants you to know.
But a lot of, Connecticut has taken a big initiative, especially with social studies
Right.
now, to revamp their standards, and a lot of it is supposed to reflect the local history. So that's what teachers are really looking for now, because that's the trick, is they have to be able to find the sources. And so a lot of different institutions are getting together to help them have those primary sources that aren't in different books that they can teach.
And local history was something that we were always good at. From when I was in school, we learned our local history. We went from 5th grade teaching it to now 3rd grade teaching it. So we've been pretty good about that, but we have to make sure everyone is on the same page and everyone is learning the same exact history.
Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about just the organization, NAACP, and how long it's been around and what's its mission. And
110 years this year.
Wow.
110 years. We like to say we're the oldest and boldest, baddest, most revered and most feared organization in the world.
You've probably had to do some adapting over the century as well.
Well, people are like, well, I think you need to get rid of that term colored out of there. And I say, well, that term has a different meaning now because we don't represent just people who are Black. We represent people of all colors. So I like to think that's what colored means now.
More like a rainbow.
Exactly. We have our Latino brothers and sisters. We have our brothers and sisters from the LGBTQ community who all have civil rights issues. So we encompass all of that now. And I think one of the big things that Julian Bond did before he died was he pushed Congress to pass laws so that gay couples could be married. That was a big project of
huge.
his, yes. So that we do embrace the LGBTQ community also.
Well, I'm guessing that everyone who gets disenfranchised has common concerns.
It's a civil rights organization. It's not I can't help you because you're white, but it's a have your civil rights been violated? Yes, they have. Let's see what we can do to help you.
Now, I know that we didn't get a chance to really, well, since Lachelle couldn't come, we didn't get as much of a chance to talk about the youth council as I would have liked, but it's become very, very active. You talked a little bit about their training, but if there are young people who want to get involved in it, how would they go about it?
They can email us or call our office, and we will get their information and see that the youth advisors, Lachelle Gillis and Riona Dice, get in touch with them.
Now, you're someone who's been involved with NAACP probably since you were in diapers.
My aunt and my uncle are on the original charter for the New London branch. And as you know, my cousin was Linwood Bland, who some think was the best NAACP president that we've had in New London, especially during the Civil Rights Movement, which was his time.
And he wrote that book about growing up in New London.
Yeah, right, which is part family history and part NAACP New London history.
And his
civil
house
rights.
is being preserved.
And his house is being preserved by
Oh,
New London Landmarks.
Right.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I've been sort of involved with the beginning of the Community Land Trust.
Right.
And the Community Land Trust.
I know they were interested in it too at one point.
They were offered it and they were thinking about it. And without the historic, tax credits and the historic support for preservation, I think I heard some just carpenters, who were saying, "Oh, what should we do to preserve this
Right.
building?" They thought that financially, it's like, it would just have to be like torn down and
Yeah.
something else built there. And I remember being at a meeting and saying,
We've torn down enough.
Yes, we're not going to. No, this would be like such bad karma to start a group to like tear down this very historic building.
Right.
And it was fantastic that Landmarks took it over. I went to the auction where they, succeeded in bidding for it, and I know that Laura at Landmarks has worked so
She
hard to
has.
get the tax credits and to get funding sources from all over to really
And she
preserve
kept me up to
that.
date on what they're doing. They're planning on, it's 2 apartments now, and she's planning on making it back to a one-family house. She's talked about how, when they had to redo the chimney, but she wanted to make sure that they did not take the bricks away so that they can repurpose those bricks.
So they're doing as much preservation
Yes,
as
they
they
are.
can. And just, once again, that's in that whole, Freedom Trail neighborhood,
It's right on Franklin, yeah.
right on Franklin Street, that has been so key.
Yes.
So it's so good to see that house that has sat empty for quite a long time.
And I think if Linwood was here, he would be very happy.
I think so too. I know I like seeing the old houses, especially the ones that have historic significance, staying intact and staying appreciated. That's part of what New London is.
Right.
It's our history. So, how often do the youth meet, like routinely?
I think they're meeting twice a month now. It's most times you have an executive committee and you have a general meeting. The youth branches run exactly the same as the adult branch. They have officers, they have committees, they receive the same training that the adults receive. So whatever I learn, they learn.
So do they choose what kind of projects they want to get involved in, or how does that work?
They're their own separate branch. They have nothing to do with the adult branch
Wow.
other than reporting to us, but they decide what they are going to be doing. They decide what route they want to take.
And I saw this, and I had made this slide a year ago when you were on, just, the objectives of developing a new generation of leadership. And it seems so important to me now. You talk to young people, and I think they have a lot of sense of urgency about, what the future will be like.
They let you know what they want. I think our training is so good over the years that Darrell Wilson of Norwich has been an NAACP member since he was a young boy. He and his brother Terrell have sat on national boards. His twin brother, who's since passed. Darrell is 26 years old. He is now the Democratic Town Committee Chair for the city of Norwich. And he's gotten to that point through his years of training with the NAACP. We have Ramon Morales, who is our youth president. He is really interested in politics. So, he makes sure he stays up on everything that's going on. We have a number of people who are in college right now, but they come back home and let us know what we're doing. We have a youth member who is now teaching. Actually, there's 2 youth members who are teaching at Benny Dover Jackson Middle School. Lillian Cook was a youth member of the Norwich branch, Robert Steen Duncan Youth Council, and Kim Molina, who is a guidance counselor, was a member of the Linwood W. Bland Youth Council. So, and we're spreading the wealth, so to say.
Now, you mentioned the Norwich branch a few times, that their Juneteenth, activities are another week away.
Right.
But what's the relationship between the New London branch and the Norwich branch?
The Norwich branch was started by the New London branch. When Linwood was president of the New London branch, they had a lot of complaints in the Norwich area and above Norwich. So they felt that was the time to break off and start another branch. And 2 of the people who helped with that was Miss Lottie Scott, Mrs. Betty Edwards Fletcher, Mrs. Betty Fletcher, and they helped Linwood set up the Norwich branch. Norwich now, in turn, has helped set up Wyndham Willimantic's branch.
And I have friends up in Willimantic, and it seems as though that branch is becoming very active.
They are very active. We just went to their Freedom Fund on this past Saturday. They are very, very active in that, what they call the quiet corner. It's not so quiet anymore.
No, well, Willimantic is a rowdy little point in that quiet
But they're
corner.
also reaching out and touching places around there, like Scotland. They did Black History Month programs in Scotland. Scotland, Connecticut had a Black History Month program.
Well, they probably benefited
They
from
did.
it.
They did. And the first selectman was thrilled. He said they reached out, they knew they had to do better, and that was the beginning. So
Now, I have one more picture just on Connecticut landmarks and the different sites. Maybe, Aileen, you can mention where these other places are, or some of them.
Sure. Well,
I'm afraid that it can't be read.
Right. At the top there, the left one and the right and the top row are both in Hartford. We have our headquarters there, and the Butler Cookhouse is right on Main Street. People in this area probably go to the one on the bottom left the most. That's the Nathan Hale Homestead, which is out in Coventry, Connecticut. And that one is really popular on Sundays because that has the state's largest farmers market. So people from all over the state bring produce. There's a ton of food trucks. Every week there's a different theme. So there's, kind of like a festival atmosphere. And we were just talking about Nathan Hale because we walked up to Williams Park on our monuments tour because he's sort of very well represented for someone that spent 15 months in New London with his big statue and his schoolhouse.
Yeah.
But that's his family's home that you can visit. He did not live there himself. And then the Hempsted house is kind of in the middle there. And the one that looks like it is actually in Wethersfield, which is the Butoff Williams house, which if you've read the Witch of Blackbird Pond book, it's supposed to be the family that lived there that it's based on. So a lot of people who've
very
read
popular
that,
5th grade book.
yes, like to go there. Yeah. And the one on the far right at the bottom is out in, or maybe it's the top one. They're small to me, but Bethlehem, Connecticut, our site there, the Bellamy Faraday site, has seen a lot of traffic lately. Because if anyone's read Martha Hall Kelly's books, one is Lilac Girls, which is about women who were from the Ravensbrück concentration camp, and Carolyn Faraday, who was a philanthropist, took them in to Bethlehem. And so there's been a fictionalized version of that, the Lilac Girls, which is very popular. And just this April, she came out with another book, Lost Roses, which is about Carolyn Faraday's mother. So they're both based on that house in Bethlehem, Connecticut. A lot of people have been reading those books and pilgrimaging out there.
And I noticed that a lot of these sites over on Saturday, people could have a very, very full day because many of them are free admission
Yes.
this weekend.
I think all our sites are free except for the one in Bethlehem.
We have about 5 minutes left, and I wanted to make sure, Jean, you talked about the program for the Freedom Fund dinner, but not how people can sign up to attend.
People can go to our Facebook page and they can look at the events, and our email and our phone number is there. And if you email or call us, we will see that you have a space at the dinner. And the dinner is June 27th, 6 p.m. at Ocean Beach. Tickets are $65.
You should talk about some of the other cases that Benjamin Crump has been involved in as
Oh, well, Benjamin Crump is the attorney for Trayvon Martin's family. He is also the attorney for some of the people in Ferguson. There was just a recent incident out in California, I want to say Northern California, and he is working also with that family, on top of being Tammy's lawyer for the case against Harvard.
So he's working all around the country
Yes, he is.
on
Yes.
equity-related cases.
Yes, and of course Josh Koskoff, the Koskoff family, Michael Koskoff, they were the lawyers for the Connecticut Black Panthers
in New Haven.
in New Haven. And we know that they are the attorneys for a lot of the families in Sandy Hook.
Now, if someone wanted to join NAACP, how would they go about that?
They can message me on Facebook and we will see that they get an application. General memberships are $30. Lifetime memberships are $75 a year for 10 years. And I tell people, do the lifetime.
And how often do you meet?
I have 2 meetings a month. I have an executive committee
Not
meeting
everyone will
and
do
a
what you-
general committee meeting. And most people come to the general committee meeting. The executive committee meeting is just made up of the executive board.
And you have a lot of breakfasts.
Yes, we do breakfast once a quarter. We started them, we call them our Martin Luther King breakfast. And we have one a quarter. We did our first one and people were like, we haven't had a prayer breakfast in a long time. We need to do this monthly. Well, I can't do that monthly.
Yeah,
It's a lot of
monthly's
work.
hard.
Yeah. So we compromise with 4. So we do one a quarter. So we had one in April, as close to Martin Luther King's assassination as we can get. Then we will have another one in either the end of July, beginning of August. We do our next one in October. It's not really quarterly that way, but we do it in October because there's a Monday holiday. And we like to do something on a Monday holiday for people who can't attend on Saturday.
Sure.
Because we have synagogues, we have our Seventh-day Adventist people who have their Sabbath day is Saturday. So we do it on that Monday to
Now, where do
accommodate
you do
everyone.
those?
We've been doing them at the New London Holiday Inn. We are switching to OIC so that we can take
Ah.
advantage of OIC's culinary program.
That sounds great. I
Right.
was aware of the Holiday Inn, but was not aware of the switch.
Right. So our next one will be at OIC.
So another perk of attending is to find out what's going on at OIC because I
That's
had
our-
no idea.
That's our office, is at OIC. So we have a good relationship with OIC. The NAACP nationally has memorandums of agreement with most major African American organizations, including the fraternities and sororities, the Masons, the Elks. OIC is just another one of those partnerships, and I think it benefits us both.
Yeah, it sounds great. So Aileen, for the Connecticut Landmarks, how do people join? How do people support it?
Right, we have memberships as well, and if people, they can, I'm sure, sign up online, and we also have sign-ups at the Hempsted houses. I know Julie Cagle, our employee, is going to be out at our Hempsted houses table for Juneteenth, where we'll have some of our things for sale. If you wanted to buy a book about the story of Joan Jackson and Adam Jackson, that will be there, and we'll have a membership table, so a lot of different things with information on the site and the people there.
Now, this is kind of the start of a whole season of events at Hempsted Houses, right? Can you just give like a 1-minute summary of what people can expect to see over the summer?
Sure. Well, we're open from May through the end of October. We have one November event because we do not have heat. So we are open during the warmer months of the season.
The November one involves fire, I hope.
Yes, it does. It does. It's our Thanksgiving event. We have a hearth cook, and she cooks in the stone house. So we have our Pirate Day coming up, which is June 29th, where we have the crew of the Raven. We're very excited to have them come. So they portray early pirates. And so we do activities with that. We have our Hempsted History Camp, which will be the first week in August 5th through the 9th. We're fundraising now to make sure we have scholarships. We usually offer a lot of scholarships for kids to come. And the kids really enjoy stepping back in time to do history. We have a lot of neighborhood kids that do it, and you'll find them all dressed up, trying to wear their historic attire to get really into it. We also do a Declaration of Independence reading, which is done by community members. So I think this is our third year doing that. So we're doing that July 6th, Saturday at 2 p.m. And that's really a great event to hear it read by all different people that were not in the room at the actual Declaration of Independence, but to really bring it forward, and we have a discussion about what it means to people today and why they're there. So those are some of our events coming up.
And I have to say, the Hempsted Houses has really become a big part of the Hempsted community. I know growing up, the Hempsted Houses wasn't a place where you felt welcome, especially if you were a child, but Aileen and the Hempsted House staff there have really opened up their doors to that community, and to see the youth there, to be involved in the history is really a big deal.
And actually, growing up in New London, that's one of the perks of being here. You're sort of in the middle of it. You're in buildings that historic figures had a link to. It's really amazing to me.
Yeah, there's some amazing history in this town.
Well, I think we're out of time. I did want to mention that I had read online that there are so many activities going on in New London on Saturday that the city is running a shuttle among them.
Right.
Yes.
So if people want to go to the Hempsted House, but also stop by the Waterfront Park Family Festival,
They will be able to do that.
and stop by the Old Mill, you don't necessarily have to choose either or.
You can do all.
Yes.
You can do all. We are open until 4 o'clock.
5.
5 now. Sometimes it's 4.
We've extended
We extended
it,
the
yeah.
hours. The Family Festival is only until 2.
That's why we extended
Right.
it. Yeah.
So you have 3 more hours to spend time with us. And then on Sunday, we're the only thing happening other than Hempsted Houses and Old Town Mill. So we, like I said, we will have food available on Sunday. So if you get out of church, you come over and see us, maybe have another church service, listen to some good music, see some dancers, grab some food. The Hempsted, some days in the summertime, I feel like I want to just get my blanket and just come over there and just sit, because it's just so nice.
It's a nice green spot.
Yeah.
It is great. Well, thank you, Jean. Thank you, Aileen. And
Thank you.
We'll see you all over New London over the weekend, but especially the Hempsted House.
Yes.
So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, nimpenda mzuri sana. Tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, ninakupenda sana. Tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, nimpenda mzuri sana. Tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika. Tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, yo nimpenda mzuri sana. Tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, tuimbe Afrika, ninakupenda sana. Tuimbe